Folks, welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. We are going through the translation that Jason has done in collaboration with Amon. Today, we're going to start with the number 40 and try to go up to number 60. Let's get started. Who would like to read the first three one by one? Each one person gets to read one of the verses, then we'll go to the next person. Go ahead and type R if you would like to read. We're going to start with Evanik. Folks, when you read, say chapter 40, return to tenderness, read the title, the number and the title, and then continue reading. Even if you can read Chinese, please don't read Chinese, just read the English part. Go right ahead, Evanik. I know you have learned the Mandarin, but please stick to English for us.
I'll restrain myself. Chapter 40, Return to Tenderness. On its return, the Tao is moving. By its tenderness, the Tao maintains its functioning. All things in the world are born out of being. Being is born out of nothingness.
Thank you, Evanik. Next is chapter 41 by Joe.
Chapter 41, Learning Dao. When the wise scholars hear about Dao, they practice it diligently. When the average scholars hear about Dao, they ignore it unintentionally. When the base scholars hear about Dao, they laugh at it loudly. If they do not laugh, it would not be the Dao. Thus, here are some sayings. The clear Dao appears dim. The advancing Dao appears retreating. The smooth Tao appears rugged. The high virtue appears low. The encompassing virtue appears insufficient. The robust virtue appears indolent. The solid truth appears inconsistent. The great witness appears spotted. The great square appears to have no concerns. The great vessel appears to have late completion. The great melody appears to have inaudible sounds. The great image appears to have no form. The Tao is hidden and nameless, but only the Tao is good, providing and completing.
So it's the whiteness, not the witness.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, whiteness. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is David Adelson.
Chapter 42, Vital Harmony. The oneness is born out of the Tao. The two, yin and yang, are born out of oneness. The three, heaven, earth, people, are born out of the two. All things are born out of the three. All things carry yin and embrace yang, and use the vital qi to harmonize them. People avoid words like the separated one, the lonely one, or the unsalaried man. But the rulers and lords use these words to refer to themselves. Therefore, things may appear damaging, but actually be beneficial. They may appear beneficial, but actually be damaging. What others taught, I also just teach. Those who act violently never die naturally. This is the beginning of my teaching.
Thank you, David. Folks, if you'd like to comment on any of these three verses, 40, 41, 42, or all of them, go ahead and type an exclamation mark. You can talk about each of the verses, how they fit in the Tao as a whole. No questions, just comments. Madeline, go ahead.
Yes, in number 40, I thought that was really lovely. I think that I haven't come across the word tenderness before in the Tao. My translation has it as yielding. And I like tenderness. It also has the connotation of affection and softness, not just of kind of a passive giving way.
Thank you, Madeline. Next up is Joe.
I'll just make a brief comment about 40. This idea of being born out of nothingness, and essentially the eventuality that we return to where we were born. As for number 41, the interesting thing that I found is the dualities here, and how these opposites essentially exist at the same time with one another, which is interesting in and of itself, because this is why the Taoists can be seen as nameless. And for 43, actually, I'll hold off on my comments for 43 at this point. Actually, I'll just say that how things essentially actually, my notes are a little bit off for that one, so I'm going to leave. Yeah.
Next up is Evanique.
Yeah, going back to 40, I wanted to comment on one line. Oh, 40. It's by its tenderness, the Tao maintains its functioning. And the word that came for me is vulnerability. When someone is tender, that means they're soft, but soft doesn't have to mean, weak. It like being soft can be, I'm trying to think of an object that can describe it, like a teddy bear almost. I know that sounds weird, but a teddy bear is soft yet strong. When you hold it, a kid holds it for protection. It's soft and it's cuddly. So when it says the Tao maintains its functioning, it functions as something that we as humans can hold on to. And it can be soft yet strong. It could be like flow, like water flowing. The water is soft, yet it can like smooth out rocks. It has such a force. So to be vulnerable and to be tender is actually a great strength.
Thank you, Evanique. I would like to comment on number 42. So I really like the first paragraph here. Ursula Le Guin has this one paragraph comment on it. Beginning with a pocket cosmology, this chapter demonstrates the interplay of energy between yin and yang by showing how low and high, winning and losing, destruction and self-destruction reverse themselves, each turning into its seeming opposite. So this idea that the oneness is born out of the Tao, the two, yin and yang, are born out of oneness. The three, heaven, earth, people, are born out of the two. All things are born out of the three. The things carry yin and embrace yang and use the vital qi to harmonize them. I think this is a beautiful, beautiful summary of the, of cosmology. Next up is DLJ. DLJ, go ahead.
Morning all. Yeah, number 40, notable contrast between East and West, being born of nothingness, whereas you've got necessary being coming from Aquinas and ontological argument coming from Anselm, right, which are insisting that being, the opposite, essentially, not coming from nothingness.
Thank you. Thank you, DLJ. Next up is Jason.
Yes, I think that's from 40. I think Magdalene talk about the translation of this word tenderness. I've been and I think another translation considers weak or flexible, yielding. I think that this concept is very important, and by tenderness, I think it's the opposite of strength, okay, opposite of force. So That's why Amon and I decided to use tenderness, because it's hard to describe. Okay, but basics I appreciate, Madeline notice the difference translation. So as DLJ comment, the last sentence, being born out of nothingness, which is totally opposite to the Western concept, right? Because basics in the Western culture, since as early as Parmenides, right? They believe nothing can come from nothing. But here in the Chinese thinking, something is born from nothing. So that's a totally different concept. And then you jump to the chapter 42, you will notice. Okay, so basics, being the universe start from nothing. Then you can have start from Dao and yin and yang and keep going. So I'm not saying this one is correct or this one is truth, but that's become to build the foundation of cosmology view, okay, in the Eastern. So you can see this foundation is different, and then both sides build a different epistemology and a different system of the philosophy. So that's all I need to say. And this one, I really like this one. It's a little bit long, and that I think Joe noticed the contrast. So again, if you go back to the cosmology view, you can create something from nothing. So that means not being and the being can coexist, right? They are not contrast. So in this way, the Eastern philosophy or Chinese philosophy start to look at the thing not contrast but more on coexist, right? Because black and white can coexist, square and the circle can coexist. So everything can coexist, not like contrast. So I think that these three, kind of explain, everything together. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Next up is JP. JP, go ahead.
In 42, when it mentions heaven, earth, people, I know there's a lot of scriptures that often say heaven and earth. And that heaven and earth to me is the yin yang, the duality, the polarity. And I like that it says people next. For me, heaven and earth, it's people in the middle. We're the and. We're made between heaven and earth. We combine it. And I like that after that, all things tend to grow from that, because after that is all the manifestation and imagination that will make everything be like it is.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, JP. Beautifully put. Next, let's go to number 43. Who would like to read? Go ahead and type a R in the chat to read. If a person has not read before, they will get a priority over people who have read. We're going to start with Joe. Joe, go ahead.
Number 43, the world's softest can prevail over the world's hardest. Only non-being can penetrate the seamless. Therefore, I know that non-action can actually gain. Teaching with no words and gaining with no action are rare in the world.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Margarita, followed by David. Margarita.
Yes, 44, knowing the limit. Just a sec, it's a bit too small for me. Reputation or life, to which do you feel dearer? Life or wealth, which do you want more? Gaining or losing, which do you worry about? Unlimited desire leads to great spending. Excessive hoarding leads to heavy loss. Knowing that what satisfies, you can avoid disgrace. Knowing what limits, you can avoid danger. This is the way to endure long.
Thank you. Next up is going to be David.
Chapter 45, Clearness and Serenity. The great success appears incomplete, but its functionality is flawless. The great abundance appears empty, but its functionality is inexhaustible. The great straightness appears crooked. The great skillfulness appears awkward. The great sophism appears reticent. Serenity overcomes restlessness. Coldness overcomes heat. Clearness and serenity set the pillar for the country.
Thank you. If you'd like to comment on any of the verses, go ahead and type exclamation mark. I'm going to start with Joe. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll start with 44. And this really, I think, calls into question what our values are, and exactly how our desires don't necessarily lead to fulfillment, and our continuous consumption kind of leads to this hedonic treadmill of sorts. So that if we know what is truly meaningful, which is following the Tao, that's where we will find our tranquility, as opposed to these external things that people have, these, that people value, whether it be our, reputations, wealth, or whatever material things that are not in accordance with the Tao. So I'll leave. That's all for now.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is Madeline.
Yes, my comment is on 45. I was thinking the line near the bottom, coldness, frigidness overcomes heat. Maybe the word chill would work. I'm getting the sense here of probably something to do with the balancing forces, the flow of thermodynamics. And so it's sort of, I'm not sure that I've got it right, but maybe overcomes. Anyway, chill might work. And then I was wondering about the meaning of the word that you've translated as both sophism and debate. Which one you liked or didn't, because this whole group of verses seems to be about things that appear to be flawed or wrong in some way, but actually aren't.
Thank you, Madeline. Next up is Joe.
Yeah, actually, that was the exact line that I was actually going to call into question, as to the idea of sophistry. When a person appears to be skilled at something and they really aren't, they're just skilled at, essentially manipulating words. But anyway, that was what the question I was going to actually kind of pose, is that the use of sophistry kind of changes the whole dynamic from the use of the word debate in that particular instance, because sophistry has a specific type of just winning the argument, versus debate is actually where you're engaging with the other individual, seeking some degree of truth.
Thank you. Folks, don't be shy. Go ahead and type exclamation mark to comment on any observations that you have. I'm going to talk about number 43. The softest. I really love this verse. The world's softest can prevail over the world's hardest. When Ursula Le Guin translates it, she uses water and stone for this. The only non-being can penetrate the seamless. Therefore, I know that non-action, wu wei, can actually gain. Teaching with no words and gaining with non-action, wu wei, are rare in the world. The thing I get from this verse is the power of function. I mean, I really like Louis Sullivan's idea of form and function. Function is the immaterial. It is the spiritual. It is the principle of operation. And form is its manifestation. So function is like water and form is like stone. So this is arguing for that it is the function that is shaping the form. And that's what I really like about this poem. Next up is going to be JP, David, and Ginny. JP.
In all the chapters, I use them for my Tai Chi practice. If anybody does Tai Chi, it's sometimes called slow Kung Fu. Very precise, very well balanced. And in chapter 43, in Tai Chi, we learn if somebody's not going to strike us, we're not striking, we're not defending, nothing's going to happen. Yet if somebody does try to strike, I don't want to use force, hard against hard. I don't even want to be that gentle. It's where that non-being can penetrate the seamless, where somebody else might flow hard against me, whether it's a wind or I'm driving in traffic and trying to understand the craziness of the other drivers. I just try to find that flow point where there is no collision, where there's no pain, and just let it go.
Wonderful. Beautifully put. Thank you. Next up is David, followed by Jeannie. David.
Yes, thanks. I mean, it's wonderful that we're having this longer discussion with multiple chapters. I mean, and trying to see the arc in this. I was now sort of curious going back. I mean, not to talk about 42, but in 42, there's this concept of that the one produces the two, the yin and the yang, and the two produces the three, with this, heaven, earth, and people out of the two. And I'm noticing now in all these chapters, but especially these more recent ones, where there's a lot of sort of compare and contrast, where there's in these next chapters, in 43, 44, there are these comparisons of soft and hard, and then especially in 44, these sort of marked ones. It's interesting to see now how 41 is setting up with this yin and yang, all these comparisons, and also this comment of the three out of the two. And I'm wondering if that's, or maybe I'm inferring into it, that we should be reading into this, trying to find a third way, trying to find a third piece of information in these other couplets, in these other compare and contrast lines, where it's, I mean, I guess 45, where we've got this, abundance is crooked, and straight, straight is crooked, skillful is awkward, and all these sort of it's always the yin and yang. It's always these sort of two things, and that chapter 41 saying, from these two comes three. So is that suggesting that the reader should be looking for a third piece of information, an implied piece of information, in all of these sort of tables and all of these opposites in these later chapters?
Thank you. David, I just want to add one more comment, inspired by what you said. We've talked about the cosmology of 1, 2, 3. I still keep going back to number 25, where it puts four things: Tao at the top, heaven, earth, and then man. So I still think that is the best capturing of the cosmology. And I see it as being like two different axes. One is between you and the Tao, the vertical axis, and then between yin and yang, which is the horizontal axis. And there's this dance going on between these two axes. Next up is Jeannie.
Well, I mean, sorry, I mean, very much I agree. just for that. Yes, you've got exactly these both of these axes. You've got, or not, but one has this heaven and earth and the people, as Freud was saying, in the middle, and are all of these sort of perfect statements here or extremes that the human being, that the real people should be in the center of this, neither straight nor crooked, neither skillful nor awkward. You know, for all of this, maybe we should be trying to place ourselves, the reality, somewhere in between. That's right. In between, as you're saying, between, you know, heaven and earth, God and Tao, all of this. It's wonderful, Shrikant.
Thank you. Next up is Jeannie.
Yeah, chapter 43, as you were reading it, I just kept seeing the image of Thich Han, who recently passed away. He seems to have that quality. The chapter 3 represents him, it seems to me. Anyway, just saw his image.
That's a beautiful observation, Jeannie. You can see this quality in great people.
Yeah.
I remember I was in Amritsar, and it so happened that Dalai Lama was staying at my hotel, and he came surrounded by all his security, but he stopped when he saw a bunch of kids waiting to greet him, and he stopped everything. His security people were trying to move, but he bent down and he spent time talking to these kids and shaking their hands and smiling at them. And that spirit, the softness, and the power of that softness. Thank you. Next up is JP.
I just wanted to add what you and David talked about in the yin and the yang, and there's so many different representations. It makes me think of the story of Goldilocks going in and always trying to decide, not this too much, not that too little, not too hot, not too cold, finding that midway balance. So I like Joel's comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Margarita.
Yeah, I like rereading these chapters. Chapter 40 and chapter 43, I think that resonates the idea of yin, being a receiver. You just stay still or wu wei, and you let the flow of nature will unfold itself. This is, I think, in a personal level, virtue. I remember last week we talked about yin leadership. So I think this is about how to embrace yin in the personal level. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Margarita. And great point about rereading the chapters. I have to tell Jason, it's wonderful rereading his text again, because it's like you remember all the past discussions and you see new observations, especially as David was pointing out, reading them, not just one verse, but a bunch of verses together, you start to see exactly how they flow. So Jason, thank you for doing this, doing the second version where we are looking at multiple of your verses together. Jason, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a great opportunity for me to hear my own writing. So I really enjoy and really appreciate. I think Margarita mentioned, it's just like what I like to point out is 40 and 43. That's a subtle difference, right? On the 40, we talk about tenderness, which is the opposite of the strength, the forceful. And on 43, we're talking about the softness, which is opposite of hard. Okay, so these two concepts, just like I think JP mentioned about the practice Tai Chi. Okay, if you practice Tai Chi, you probably will really understand what's the meaning, right? When people hit you very hard, you try to block. You can either block very hard, okay, try to be stronger than your opponent, or you can just follow his direction, okay, and then bend it. Then that's another way to block. So Tai Chi practice is based on followed by the soft, by the tender. Okay, so opposite than the Western boxing, fighting, this kind of thing. So that's the thing I'd like to mention. And another thing is 45 about, I think they have raised some question about the sophistry. The one green one is kind of suggested by Amon. So I haven't make decision which one is better. But I like to mention is all the Chinese philosophy in general against. I call it the sophistry, okay, but sometimes the debate, arguing, okay, they usually not in agreement with this kind of behavior, being even in Confucius teaching, in Taoism teaching, they all believe talking too much is not good, except if somebody in the Asian philosophy, except the school of names and except the Moism, okay, they like to debate, they like to talk, they believe the truth. They are more westernized philosopher. They believe dialectics is the way to clear up things, to find the truth. But in Confucianism, in Taoism, they all believe talking too much is useless, is waste your time. You just want to win. So that's a two school in ancient China, but in today, look guys, the Taoism and the Confucianism is on the winner side, and then the school of names and the Moism are losing. So you can see the result, who is winning, right? If you want to debate turnout, you lose. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go to the next 3 verses. Go ahead and type a R if you would like to read. We're going to start with Evanik, Joe, and Joe. Evanik, go ahead.
Chapter 46, Contentment. When the world was governed with Dao, the fast horses were working in the soil, in the soils. When the world was governed without the Tao, the warehouses were born on a battlefield. No calamity is greater than not recognizing sufficiency. No mistake is greater than desiring too much. Therefore, the sufficiency of recognizing sufficiency is the unchanging sufficiency. I think sufficiency is much better transition than, oh, I'm reading the notes, sorry.
No,
I just went right through, sorry.
Yeah, but I think that's a war horses. Okay, I think probably should put the hash here. It's not warehouse. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gosh, my reading is bad today.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you. I think put a dash line would be better. Yeah.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Joe, followed by David. Joe.
Without traveling, you can know the world. Without peeking through a lattice window, you can see the heavenly Tao. The further you go, the less you learn. That's why the sage does as follows. Without traveling, he knows. Without appearing, he is renowned. Without acting, he achieves.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is David.
Chapter 48, Process of Decreasing. Pursuing knowledge is a process of increasing. Pursuing the Tao is a process of decreasing. Decreasing and decreasing again until Wu Wei is reached. Practice Wu Wei, but nothing is undone. Gain the world by constantly not interfering. Those who interfere cannot gain the world.
Thank you. Folks, if you would like to comment, go ahead and type an exclamation mark. Joe, could you handle the moderating for a few minutes while I step away?
Absolutely, sure. So everyone type exclamation point in the chat if you'd like to share your thoughts on 45, 46, or 46, 47, or 48. David.
I mean, at least I see in 47 and 48 a lot of commonality here. I mean, connection. It's especially the last stanza, the last phrases of each one. I mean, it definitely appears a lot of sort of non-action that, when the less one does, the more one achieves, not traveling, not appearing, that sort of, not acting, that it's that the sage at least succeeds more the less that he or she does. And similarly in 48, it's about doing as little as possible. Those who do not fear gain without interfering. It just at least it seems to me that those two chapters have a lot of connection in together. A good pairing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot of internal work that it's really talking about with these two. JP, you're next.
I think it's chapter 47. Right. I want to quote Carl Jung, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens.
Thank you. Next up, we have Madeline, followed by Margarita.
I liked David's link between 47 and 48. Again, that made me think of thermodynamics. Maybe it's just because we're in Fimbulwinter right now and feels like the heat death of the universe in February. But that that by this doing nothing, by residing in yin, all of the hardness and brightness of the world will run down around you and kind of deconstruct. And anyway, that's what it's looking like right now. And I especially, anyway, I loved 47. I loved the lattice window one and the discussion we had about it. And it's nice to see all of these again, because I remember the discussions we had about them in detail. And it's fun to look at them and sort of see the arc.
I agree with that. It has been a lot of fun actually going through this together with everyone, but actually going through it a little bit differently. Yes, I recall the conversations as well. So we are going to have Margarita followed by Kevin.
Yeah. I like rereading again chapter 46, which I think relate with chapter 44. Say something about to know your contentment, your enough. For me, just like in the verse, you can't choose where you were born, in what kind of situation, whether the war or during the war or during the where the farmers grow the plant as farmers. But knowing that we can always return to Wu Wei, and we know the limit. You don't have to pursue all those things that has conditioned, all those things that have conditioned you into becoming like Wu right now. And probably that is 47, saying something about how to unlearn those urges. You want to fulfill things, you want to keep going, you want to control, and you want to keep obtaining things that you think important that probably may not be that important. Thank you.
Thank you, Margarita. I have Kevin followed by Madeline.
Thank you, Joe. I got 2 points about the sort of first Margarita mentioned at 44, 47 about limiting and limitation and enough. That's simple, but it's a big question for when enough is enough from personal to the community. That's a question. We also connected to the next point about is about learning and Dao, 学 and Dao comparison. We also modern practice, even in China, we say 读外卷书，行外理路. I'm not sure this. I'm going to quick translate this to the basically read more and walk. You learn more and walk more. Like for example, traveling. People say that traveling, I know they learn here, there. Here, not opposite. Like Madeline said, you stay at home, you still see the world, especially these days. So this one thing overall, Dao, about the Dao De Jing and the Dao Sao, it's like turn our view upside down. Another side of story still kind of makes sense. Like look ourselves, look our belief, look our practice. Oh, I never think about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up, I have Madeline.
Okay, the one with sufficiency in it. Let's see.
It's 46.
Yes, that one. Okay, so I'm thinking about the word sufficiency, and I'm thinking that maybe the word enoughness would work for that, because enough, it also has a feeling of satisfaction in terms of eating, you know, like I've had enough, I'm full. So it might be therefore the enoughness of recognizing enoughness is the unchanging enoughness. At any rate, it's a suggestion. I'm not sure where else the character appears, and if you would want to also translate it as enoughness there, or if it would some other word would make sense.
Let's thank you for the comment. I'm gonna read really quickly. Oh, well, let me go ahead. I'm gonna read actually number 47, a comment by Ursula Le Guin. She says for number 47, we tend to expect great things from seeing the world and getting experience. A Roman poet remarked that travelers change their sky, but not their soul. Other poets, untraveled and inexperienced, Emily Bronte and Emily Dickinson, prove Lao Tzu's point. It's inner eye that really sees the world. So speaks to more of our inner selves versus our outer selves. So I have Margarita, I'm sorry if I stepped in front of you there, and Jing.
Okay. Reading 47 and 48, I made a lot of notes. So it wasn't so easy for me to read about unlearning, about to decrease your knowledge up until you can do Wu Wei. For a person who has been conditioned for a long time to sustain life, to excel things, it's not easy. So I assume it's not an easy journey to obtain this Wu Wei, especially to learn unlearning and to let go things. For me, this is the point that I can see the connection between Dao with Christianity. In Christianity, we were taught that God has a plan. You just have to believe the plan. That's why you need to have faith. Even just a tiny seed of faith that will save you, because God has planned. But in Dao, it's in a line that's saying the nature already has its cycle, and it will return, and it will be, solving things even though you're not doing anything. So yeah, just good. Thank you.
That's interesting, because one of the that's an interesting link, and one of the notes that I had made with 48 was essentially not being obsessed with outcomes and being tied to outcomes and just allowing things to be. And essentially, yes, that there this idea that we can change and this idea of control is really an important point. So I have Kevin followed by I believe
You're
no, I'm sorry,
recording.
Jang. I have Jang followed by Kevin.
Yeah, so I wonder, I actually don't quite agree with, I think there's a, we know we have 16 personality type. We have introvert, extrovert. I think for introvert people, both Carl Jung, maybe Lao Tzu, they're all introvert type of people. That's why they can learn everything just by staying inside. But for extrovert like me, I need to go outside to learn and to explore. I think it's very different personality and the way of learning. You people extrovert. That's why COVID said it's introvert people so much better than extrovert people. They can enjoy music, they can do all this, but we do need balance, of course. But I don't quite agree that's the only way. I think people learn differently. That's what I want to share.
Thank you, Jang. Next up is Kevin.
Yes, thank you, Joe Koenig. I will follow James about continue my point. The point not just even let's see which type of you are. I would say need both for personally. We need look around, need action, also need an action. You chapter 48, I believe one is okay. 无为而无不为. That's I would understand this point. Jason's translation is practice 无为, but nothing is undone. The 无为 doesn't mean you cannot get things undone. It's you still get things done by 无为. So for me, it's got multiple meaning. For here, I would say you can buy something, you do something, but something don't do it. You could use Western way, use priority. I know this one has done. Then if this key is done, this project, this task should be achievable. And also, sometimes serious. You don't need those like argument and what's the key point, find the solution, find what's a functional rather than keep argument about the forms. It's a form. If you talk about form, follow the function. Normally we keep it turn around. We forget what we want, what we need. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Kevin. Let's see. And next up, I have Madeline.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, for clarifying that. I had thought that the part about undone.
Right.
Jason, can you scroll back to that one? There we go. Maybe it would be better from what Kevin said, but nothing is left undone. Because undone can have sort of two senses. One means you didn't do it, but the other means more like unraveling. So the way with but nothing is undone means sort of like more like nothing is unraveled. Yeah, to me, nothing is left undone would make more sense in terms of what Kevin said.
Thank you, Madeline. So next up, Jason, would you like to make your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madeline. Give a good word suggestion. I think that make it clear. I agree. Yeah. So I hope everybody also agree. And thank you for another good word suggestion. You call for the enoughness. Yeah, that's another word, probably good. The reason, the challenge here, a lot of things I try to make on the translation is I try to match the tone Okay, when you read in Chinese. So the last sentence, 故知足之足，常足矣. Okay, they use 3 words called 足, means sufficiency, enoughness. So I don't see any translation, English translation, use this same word for 3 times. Okay, so I think that's the challenge I try to make it, and then I hope it's still clear to catch the tone on this one. And during everyone's comment, just like Jen said, she disagree and something, and I think everybody has something disagree. So when I do this one, it's many things I disagree. I try to argue. Okay, but that's very common. So, but the thing I like to point out is not agree or disagree. I find out this text is very different than rest of Chinese text and also in the Western text in the world. If you remember in the Bhagavad Gita, or you remember in the Platonic dialogue, okay, there's a lot of background going on. Bhagavad Gita, they have the background in the battlefield, so you know who is talking to whom. And then in Platonic dialogue, always talking about this guy meeting this guy, he tell this guy, last time I meet Socrates, then blah, 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 the situation. So basically, you have a conversation, you know what's the background. But the different thing in Dao De Jing is there's no speaker, there's no audience. We have to assume. And then you look at the sentence, I'm looking at Chinese. Sometimes it shows I, okay, and that's the speaker. But they didn't say who you are, okay, and they didn't say who is the audience. So a lot of time I have to assume it's a master teaching, give advice to the prince, the young prince. So that's just an assumption based on the context. So by reading this way, we can have many, many different thoughts. And then really depend on how you insert the subject on each sentence. Okay, and then that's the challenge. And that's also bring the beauty of reading this one, because you kind of like have a feeling it's like watching a conversation by A and B, and you don't know who is A, who is B, and then you kind of like play around and then try to fit your personal experience. So I think in a way, it's confusing, but in a way, it's helping. That you think a lot. And then bring the tough job for me as a translator also. So if I try to write in English, I have to put the subject, okay, and the audience in this one to bring up the tone. So I have to try very hard to not bring my personal judgment on this one, and then try to reflect on the real original Chinese writing. So that's the thought, when I listen to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. So no, I see Shrikant's back.
Yes.
So we're just about to start reading
49.
the next 3, 49. Yeah, 49.
Thank
50,
you. Thank
51.
you, Joe, as always.
No problem.
Folks,
Thank you.
if you'd like to read, please go ahead and type R. Anybody who has not read before will get priority, but please go ahead and type R in order to read. It's going to be Joe followed by Margarita. Joe.
The sage has no unchanging mind. His mind is the mind of the people. Those who are good, I am good to them. Those who are not good, I am also good to them. This is the virtue of goodness. Those who are trustworthy, I trust them. Those who are not trustworthy, I also trust them. This is the virtue of trustness. When the sage governs the country, he makes his mind vague for the sake of not disturbing the country. The people all focus on their cleverness, but to the sage, all are as children.
Thank you. Next up is Margarita.
Chapter 50, Life and Death. Out of the cradle of life till into the grave or death, 3 out of 10 people can live long. 3 out of 10 people may die young. 3 out of 10 people could live but die by entering the places of death accidentally. Why so? Because people focus too much on living lives of excess, not avoiding places of death. I heard that those who are good at nurturing their life walk about the land without running into celestial oxen, fierce buffaloes, or tigers. When on battlefield, no weapon can hurt them. Because the celestial oxen or fierce buffaloes find no places for their horns to pierce. Tigers find no places to insert their claws. Weapon find no places to gain their edges. Why? They are simply not in a place of death.
Thank you, Margarita. Next up is David.
Chapter 51, Honor and Value. Tao gives them life. Virtue raises them. Matter gives them shape. Conditions are complete for them. For this reason, all things honor Tao and value virtue. The honor and value are Tao's and virtue's own unchanging ways without the claims of others. Therefore, the Tao gives them lives, virtue raises them, cultivating and raising them, mellowing and maturing them, tending and shielding them, producing them without possessing, working for them without flaunting, raising them without dominating. This is the profound virtue.
Thank you, David. Folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark to comment on any of these verses. First is Evanique.
I'm going to comment on verse 49. Where it talks about trustworthiness. Those who are trustworthy, I trust them. Those who are not trustworthy, I also trust them. This is the virtue of trustiness. And I was thinking of when we studied this verse on the Tuesday night session, and I think it was Mike who said, he was talking about someone, and he said that, he can trust this person in certain things, but like he wouldn't trust his girlfriend around this person. And I thought about that, and I think this still rings true, is that, those who are not trustworthy, I think you know what to trust certain people for. Someone might be a great person. If you need them, they'll come right over, but don't expect them to call every day. So I think that particular part is about seeing people for who they are and choosing to accept them and to trust them in the things that they can be trusted for without judgment. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Evanique. Next up is Joe.
That was almost the same exact comment that I was actually going to bring back up. It was, I remember Amon explicitly actually mentioning his brother, or, in that circumstance as an example. And yes, this idea of knowing when to trust one, but I think when to trust someone and with what to trust them with. But there is also something very deep here. And that's the idea that the sage is someone that is open and not necessarily continually judging someone else. So that in not passing judgment, and I see this as something, you're not judging it as good or bad in and of itself. You're remaining open to a particular situation. And that's a very Stoic concept as well. So anyway, I'll leave it at number 49 for now.
Thank you, Joe. I also want to comment on number 49. I'm going to read out the commentary of Ursula Le Guin on this. The next to last line, which she translates as ordinary people look after them, look after the sages. The next to last line is usually read as saying that ordinary people watch and listen to wise people. But Lao Tzu has already told us that most of us wander on and off the way and don't know a sage from a sandpile. And surely the quiet Taoist is not a media pundit. Similarly, the last line is taken to mean that the wise men treat ordinary people like children. This is not true. This is patronizing and makes a hash out of the first verse. I read it to mean that the truly wise are looked after or looked upon like children because they are trusting, unprejudiced, and don't hold themselves above or apart from ordinary life. I really like the last line here, but to the sage all are as children, and the sage itself, I mean, the idea of child, of being a child, is deep throughout. Next up is Madeline.
Thanks, Shrikant. That was great. I think in the first part of 49, it would be nice to actually just put in what Jason has in the notes to say, the sage has no unchanging heart-mind idea. So it would be his heart-mind idea is the heart-mind idea of the people, or even just heart-mind. And what was the other one? Oh, toddlers. I think definitely put toddlers in instead of children. And I'm trying to see a sort of through current to the three that we just read. And I'm not really seeing it. Maybe they're just not related since it wasn't written in groups of threes. That's just how we're reading it. I think that, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Madeline. Next up, we're going to go to the next three. Go ahead and type R if you'd like to read. We're doing very well on time. We are on track to get to close to 60 at least. Who'd like to read? Go ahead and type R. I'm going to start with Evanik.
Okay, chapter 52, Embracing the Mother. The world has its own beginning, which is regarded as the mother of the world. From the mother, you can understand her son, the world. After knowing the son, the world, you still need to embrace the mother again. And this way you can live, in this way you live as, in this way, your lives can be away from dangers. Closing apertures and shutting gates, you would not face hard lives through your lives. Opening apertures and increasing activities, you would not be safe through your lives. To see the small is to be enlightened. To keep supple is to be strong. Use light to be enlightened. You won't lose yourself to danger. This is how to continue and employ the unchanging law.
Thank you, Evanik. Next up is Margarita.
Chapter 53, The Great Way. If I know a little wisdom, I will avoid going astray when traveling on the Great Way, Dao. The Great Way is smooth, but people prefers shortcuts. The courts are abandoned, the fields are barren, the barns are empty. The noblemen wear finery, carry precious words, and indulge in food and drink. Their excessive wealth is like robbers showing off. This is not Tao.
Thank you, Margarita. Next up is David.
Chapter 54, Building Well. Build something firmly, it won't be uprooted. Hold something tightly, it won't be stripped off. Worship ancestors and your lineage will continue. Cultivate it in yourself, its virtue should be genuine. Cultivate it in your family, its virtue should be abundant. Cultivate it in your village, its virtue should be lasting. Cultivate it in your state, its virtue should be prosperous. Cultivate it in the world, its virtue should be universal. Therefore, you should introspect yourself from the cultivated self. Introspect your family from the cultivated family. Introspect your village from the cultivated village. Introspect your state from the cultivated state. Introspect the world from the cultivated world. How do I understand the situation of the world? By means of this.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, folks, now it's time to comment, and people who typed in R, you will get a chance to read the next 3 verses. But now we are going to go ahead and comment on these verses. Go ahead and type exclamation mark to comment on any of these verses. Okay, I'm going to start with verse 54. This is definitely one of my favorite verses. The building walls, the name I had given to it was universal power. No, sorry, yeah, universal power. The thing I love about this is how it takes the Tao, it is about the Tao and how it operates in us. And it goes in these concentric circles outward, showing how it works, you know, inside you, inside your family, inside your village, inside your country, and inside the world. Ursula Le Guin's comment on this is, it is the Tao that plants and keeps the various kinds of power the various kinds of power belong to the Tao. And finally, in myself, I see the Tao of self and so on. So it is going always, I like this progression, cultivating it in yourself. It's the virtue. The virtue should be genuine. In your family, abundant. Village, lasting. State, prosperous. World, universal. And then introspect yourself from the cultivated self, introspect your family from the, so I like this entire of kind of saying that it's all Tao that is operating at all levels, but the way in which it manifests itself at every level is different. And you're going through these concentric circles and talking about how it operates there. That's what I got from it. Joe.
Yeah, sorry, I was a little bit late coming back to this, but yeah, number 54 as well. I have notes, you know, basically how you cultivate yourself within your family and how essentially this virtue spreads out all around you, that it's very different than, say, how in other texts that you may need to evangelize and go out. It's more about the inner person and actually being an example for the people around you and how that can actually multiply, as opposed to you going out. And this actually also in a way leads to a certain inaction that allows you to and how you interact with others, that leads to a better relationship for everyone involved. I'm trying to read some of my notes really quickly. I'll come back.
Sure. Next up is Kevin, followed by JP. Kevin.
Yeah, I'm going to continue with the conversation. Thank you, everyone, share about chapter 54. It's from oneself or self to the family, to the village, to the state and world. By using the, then going to benefit, you want to benefit for yourself, or for family, village, and state, world. That's the method, like from Dao or from author self, they consider. That's how I, look at the world about the, not just from that aspect. Then next, they also, Jason used introspect. Let's also not just try evaluate. Can we approve it from the look back forth? Let's from I want to look inspect myself from cultivated others. Then look from others, look to yourself back for 以身观身. You can from yourself or to other self or to yourself to look. If for time matter, you can from the previous one, what you do years ago, and you look at now, or you could other self to help you from. That's also it happened to your family, village, and state, country. Basically, comparable learning yourself. That's why back to another chapter. How can you close door, know the world? That's about his method. But thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up is JP.
The ideas mentioned by many about looking how the chapters build. A few chapters back, we heard we can look at everybody as a child or a toddler, in a sense, needing to learn, to trust, and to be good to one another. And that's where I need to start with myself. If I'm genuine, I trust myself and others, and I'm good to myself and others. And that way in my family, I can be abundant with that trust and goodness. And then I can find a village in which that family with me, we can make the genuineness and the abundance lasting, etc., building on that fashion.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, JP. Next up is Joe.
Yeah, really quickly, just something about number 52 was something we started about thinking at linking it back to number 40, when there were comments about the distinction between East and West, and how this basically is saying something that we're a child of the Tao, we're the child of nature, versus a child of God per se. So there's a kind of distinction between these two that we're talking about, maybe a little bit with number 40. But number 53, where that's where let me go back and read it really quickly. Yeah, the noblemen wear fine things, and basically when you start to see rulers just stray from the Tao itself, I think that's when you start to see civilizations actually go into peril, when they're essentially valuing external things more than they are actually the positions and the roles and responsibilities that they hold. So they're valuing, and we've talked about this before, maybe their positions more than their actual functions. So that's and that ultimately leads us to our own peril, and it's not the Tao. Anyway, those are my comments.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is Margarita.
Yes, I remember there were times that before we do this rereading session, we were talking about listing virtues mentioned in Dao, in Dao De Jing, I mean. And among those virtues, I think mother is one of the virtues, other than water and uncarved wood. I think it's quite interesting here in this chapter 52. Mother is explained as a virtue, not in a, you commonly thought that mother is like receiving, but it's here about knowing with understanding with clarity. You want to see the source, you want to see the truth, you want to be enlightened. So mother is not just being feminine yin, but it's more about how this virtue that you need to cultivate in you into seeing things in clarity. That is the source of strong, and you can try to get, you want to obtain, if you want to obtain safety, not safe, oh yeah, something like that, about enlightenment.
Thank you, Margarita. Next up is Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Margarita. Talking about the mother, yes, I think you explain it just like what I understand it. My understanding, yeah, because mother here means the source, and then in Dao De Jing they use mother, mu, and fu, the father, okay, both as a source, but with subtle difference, okay, just like a real mother and the father, okay, when they use mother and the father, okay, that means the source, the beginning, but the mother, just like a real mother, will have produced, and the father, when they use the father as a source, that means more on the starting point, not focus much on the process, okay, just let start. More like your ancestor genealogy, okay, source. That's kind of meaning. I think that's the subtle difference. And I think one thing I like to pay attention to remind everyone is the this one, the introspect. I think, to me, I think introspect is very important to talk about this one, because I specifically pick introspect because Chinese call guan cha. Okay, that's the word guan we use, and cha is another word. Okay, usually we use as observation. Okay, that's in today's world. But if you dig into the word itself in the ancient time, guan and cha. Cha means look outside, inspect outside. Guan means look inside. So in today's world, people say guan cha, that means observation thoroughly. Okay, so we forget that in the ancient time, these two words are separate, look outward and inward. So here, Dao De Jing specifically pick guan as looking inward. So I think that's important. At least when I read this one, I think that's important to separate this common word, because Dao De Jing also use another word called cha, okay, means looking outward as a bad thing. If you look at chapter 20, okay, the Lao Tzu said, I'm retiring, other people are cha, that means keep looking outside, but I'm looking inside. So I think that's important separate in reading Dao De Jing, if you read in Chinese to me. And another thing I pay attention, I think a lot of people mention this, is the method of gradually increase from small to big, from self, from family, from village, from the state, from the world. Okay, everything starts from yourself and to your family, to your neighborhood, to the state, to the world. This kind of logical thinking is not only in Taoism, also in the Confucianism. Okay, if you read the Great Learning, I think I host one of these doing this one. It's typical the same way, but in the Confucius way. I put a list here. Okay, in the Confucius teaching and Taoism teaching, they are doing the same method, but they are talking about different things. So that's the thing I like to mention. Thank you.
Jason, one question. In with the introspect on this side, you use the word cultivated. Can you talk a little bit about the choice of the word cultivated?
Yes, that's a difficult word. Okay, shu, that's the word. If you look at this one, that's the word. Okay, keep talking about shu. This one means practice, means cultivate, means improve yourself. You're doing something. So one way we say, if I'm tired, I'm sick. Okay, so I will use the word xiu yang. Xiu is this word, yang means nurture. Okay, so I will improve myself physically and mentally, okay, or psychologically. So that's the word, okay? And especially the same thing you use for the monk, okay, or the Taoism priest, priest, right? If you stay in the temple, you praise the God. That's another word called shu. Okay, you cultivate, improve yourself. In Catholic nun, Catholic nun, okay, we call shu girl. Okay, so that's the girl who is shu, who cultivate. That's the nun in Catholic. So I hope I catch the meaning.
No, I'm sorry, I was not clear. In the section on introspect yourself from the cultivated self. So that cultivated word that you have used there.
Yeah, the cultivated, okay, this one is also difficult part. And then I have to kind of, this word is not show up here, okay? I kind of insert it. Technically, I should put a parenthesis on this one. But the challenge here is, how are you going to introspect self from self? What kind of self? Okay, that's why I have to put a little bit interpretation here. So I will assume to make sure, remember I talked about my goal, okay? If I have the interpretation, I try to do the suspension of judgment. So I try not to interpret. But one thing I want to make is make sure the whole chapter logical sense. So in this part, I face a problem because a lot of interpreter, they put the learn yourself and then teach other people. Or there's many different ways to talking about. So I believe to make the whole chapter logically sound, we have to assume you look at yourself from the cultivated self, so you can keep improving inwardly. So that's my own interpretation. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, folks, so we'll go to the next three. The readers this time is going to be Jeannie, followed by Joe. Anybody else wants to read, they can go ahead and type R. Jeannie, go ahead. Jeannie, you need to unmute.
Oh dear, I'm so sorry. Chapter 55, the richness of virtue. Those who hold the richness of virtue are like newborn babies. Poisonous insects do not sting them. Ferocious beasts do not grab them. Birds of prey do not attack them. Their bones are weak, tendons soft, but their grips are firm. They know nothing but sexual intercourse, but their little penises are erect. This is because they are in the state of optimal distillate virility. They cry all day, but never get hoarse. This is because they are in the state of optimal harmony. Knowing what is harmonious is to follow the unchanging law. Knowing the unchanging law is to be enlightened. Nourishing lives is to show a good omen. Directing Ji by the heart mind is to gain strength. Keep your Chi and virility like newborn babies, otherwise, that which is too robust ages fast. It does not follow the Tao. Without the Tao, it comes to an early end.
Thank you, Jenny. Next up is Joe.
Chapter 56, the nobles. The wise do not speak. Speakers are not wise. They close their apertures, shut their gates, blunt their sharpness, undo their tangles, harmonize their light. They are the same as dust. This is the profound sameness. You don't gain anything from those whom you are intimate. You don't gain anything from those whom you are distant. You don't gain anything from those to whom you are favorable. You don't gain anything from those to whom you are malevolent. You don't gain anything from those to whom you are superior. You don't gain anything from those to whom you are lowly. For this reason, they are nobles of the world.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is Evanique.
Chapter 57, Governing the State. Governing a state by russification, correctness, conducting warfare by surprise stratagems, gaining the world by non-interfering. How do I know? See below. The more prohibitions the world has, the more impoverished people become. The more fancy tools the people have, the more disordered the state becomes. The more cunning the people become, the more strange, useless, expensive things are produced. The more laws and decrees are used, the more bandits and thieves you get. Hence the sage said, I act with Wu Wei, and the people are civilized all by themselves. I love tranquility, and the people are rectified all by themselves. I don't interfere, and the people become rich all by themselves. Can't see that last line. Can you move? Thank you. I have no desires, and the people are like uncarved blocks, pooh, all by themselves.
Thank you, Evanique. Folks, if you'd like to comment, go ahead and type an exclamation mark. Evanique.
I wanted to comment on 56. The part where it says, therefore, you don't gain anything by those who you are intimate. And I was thinking of this whole thing, and I was thinking of the center and periphery. And it seems like this is saying that if you don't, like, if you're looking to gain something that's in your periphery from other people, you don't, like, you have to, like, if you try not to gain anything from the periphery, that you are the noble of the world, because you're focusing on your center. When you're trying to look to other people for something to complete you, that doesn't work. So that's where I had that thought of center and periphery.
Thank you, Evanique. Anybody else wants to comment? Margarita?
Yeah, in line with Evanique, I also want to see the number. I think number 50, chapter 56 is, I forgot what chapter that is about mothers. There are several lines are similar about shutting the doors. I think this is not just not talking, but you need to get clarity from the source to be enlightened before you make comments, before you try to control. So you get the depth before you speak. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Margarita. Next up is Joe.
Yes, just looking at number 56. The wise do not speak, and speakers are not wise. Again, I think that this is true, that essentially that people that are silent often are the most wise, because they know when to speak and when not to speak. And as far as when you don't gain anything from those whom you're intimate or distant. I'm trying to think of this. Essentially, I'm gonna have to come back to that.
Sure.
Actually,
Sure.
I'm sorry.
No problem. Next up is Lisa.
I don't understand it from that whole chapter number 56, because I constantly ask questions and I constantly look humble. And so I'm constantly not arguing. I'm looking for the truth from a point of view. Maybe not the point of view that's being presented to me. And here this is telling me that not to talk. And that contradicts who I am. So is that what this is saying? Is that saying that I'm wrong for doing that?
Wonderful. What we'll do is that when Jason speaks, he will address that.
Okay.
Next up is JP.
56 also. Where we don't gain anything from those to whom we are intimate or distant, favorable, malevolent, superior, lowly. I think the idea is that we've already made the decision about our relationship. If somebody is intimate with me, I will always think that is important because it's intimate with me. That person is, or that person's distant from me. Therefore, well, how much would that person really know about me? Somebody's favorable, great what they have to say. Malevolent, maybe I don't trust them. Again, everything said before has built up about the trust and about being kind to somebody. I think also at the beginning where it says the wise don't speak and the speakers are not wise is the same decision. If I've made a decision that somebody's intimate with me, I want them to speak. I will think they're wiser. And somebody distant, well, they can just be quiet. They're too far away. They don't know me. That's how I'm looking at it.
Thank you, JP. Next up is Jason. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Look, guys, everybody only pay attention on 56. Okay, I don't know why, but just answer Lisa's question on whether or not she's right or wrong. I have no judgment on that, but I probably read the first sentence different than most of people. I read I read the Chinese. Okay, 知者不言，言者不知. Okay. This 知 means wise or knowledgeable or smart. So the translation, I think word by word is correct. The word the wise people do not speak. The speakers are not wise. That means people talk are not wise. So I read it in a different way. Most of people say like, oh, the smart people don't, the wise people don't talk too much, and the stupid people talk so much. Okay. So that's the common understanding. I look at this one with the whole text of 56. I think the first sentence is talking about you talk or not talk. It doesn't matter that much. Okay. So you can interpret as you talk just timely. And then it's not on the rule of talk or not talk. Okay, basic, it's not on this. It talk about no difference, because the end talk about 玄同, the profound, the sameness, because they are all the same. And then here it talk about in the nature world, in the situation, right? Here is talk about the nature situation, talk about the light, the tangle, the sharpness. You want to, avoid being different than other people. So in this way, you look at this first sentence is like when people are not talking, you group with a lot of talkative people. Okay. For example, like me. Okay, I travel to America. Most of people talk a lot, so I have to talk. Otherwise, people think I'm stupid. So in Taiwan, where I am now, okay, most of people in the group discussion, people are very conservative, not talk. So if I talk too much, sounds like I'm stupid. So I probably want to conservative a little bit. So probably that's the way it's talking about. That's why it's talking about shut the gate, blunt the sharpness, undo the tangle, harmonize the light. You don't have like shining light. You kind of harmonize. Then you talk about your personal life. It doesn't matter. The person who close to me, distant to me, I favor, I don't like. The people on the higher position than me, the people on the lower position to me, I don't get anything from them. In another way, I treat them all the same. So the last sentence, because all of this, I can be the nobles of the world. So I think that's the whole chapter is a teaching on this one. That's my interpretation. It's a little bit different than most interpreters, but that's the way I think. Yeah. Another one that I talk about is 55. Okay. I think somebody laughed when I translate the baby's penis. Okay. But I just want to say, I have to use this word because this word specifically means the baby's penis. Okay, so it's very clear. So I have to use this word. So that's not because I'm thinking about this way, but most of interpret a bit more, kind of change the word. But you look at the dictionary, this word just means that. Okay, no other choice. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Next up is Kevin, followed by Madeline. Kevin.
Yeah, just that chapter 56, follow that the first, 知者不言，言者不智. The first, I would say from our personal experience, if we got a supervisor, do you like the micromanagement, like pinpoint, can you do this today? Oh, your way is not that good. I would say that's, if you prefer this kind of management style, like the government, you like this, tell you what to do, leave the people alone. They can finish their job. Make the previous chapter, one chapter scene, they feel they done the job. They are happy. As boss, you are happy too. That's one angle. Another one is here's, yeah, if we are dialectical talking, try share a different opinion, that's not this here, yeah, talk about. Sometimes, yeah, if we make this, we talking normally, okay, you are not good, I'm good. So normally we see this, especially obviously in politicians, right? That's not the way. So normally smart people, yeah, don't do that. I say another third point is the culture aspect. If a culture aspect in East, I would say normally they value people talk less than value people doing more. Not value people to talk more. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up is Madeline.
Well, excuse me. We do have the theme of the child emerging here. We had the son of the mother. So the son is basically the world of things and activities and people and goings on. There were also those toddlers running around who the sage is just kind of going to ignore and let them do their thing. And then we also have this kind of primal infant full of energy. So I do see that theme. I was wondering about the word dust here, if it is being translated as the sort of dust motes that would float in the air, or if it means more like the word dirt, the way the King James Bible uses the word dust. Is it an exact equivalent of the English word dust?
Thank you, Madeline.
Let me answer the question. This word dust, that means dust, the real dust. Okay, so I don't know it's the same as the Bible or not, because, but that's the dust. So.
I would say, I mean, the thing that I get from this entire chapter is to be focused on the ground, not the figures. So it's like the base of everything. So if you're focused on the base of everything, then you're kind of reducing yourself to the ground of everything. So you're not really affected by people loving you or hating you, being favorable or malevolent, all of that. Superior or lowly doesn't really matter because you're the ground. And that's, and it also explains the, kind of blunting, removing the tangles, harmonizing, being the dust. So it's about ground versus figure. All right, let's go to the next three. And I think that's what we'll be able to finish before 10 o'clock. Who would like to read? Go ahead and type a R. We'll start with Margarita.
Chapter 57, Governing the State. Governing a state by sorry, I need to
We read
enlarge.
this one.
Oh, sorry. So it's supposed to be 58, yeah? Yeah.
Yeah. Do we read this one?
Have we?
No. Oh, yeah, we read this one. We read this one. Yeah. Just nobody comment. That's why we forget.
Yeah. Okay.
Just to remind everyone, that one is the one Ronald Reagan quoted. Okay, so Ronald Reagan probably already explained it. Hey, is that the one? Oh, no, sorry.
58, yeah.
Yeah, that okay, sorry. 60 is the one Ronald Reagan talked about.
I think 57 is more related with 58, 59. Maybe we can comment later on.
Okay.
So, chapter 58, Inspecting. If the government is inwardly reflecting, the people will be honest. If the government is outward inspecting, the people will be cunning. Misfortune is what fortune leans on. Fortune is what misfortune hides under. Who knows the limit? There is no proper expectation or norm. The expected may become unexpected. The good may become wicked. Most people are confused for a long time. For this reason, the sages square or principle, yet not cutting or sharp corner, irreproachable, yet not unforgiving or not hurting people, straightforward, yet not unbridled, bright, yet not blazing.
Wonderful. Thank you, Margarita. Next up is Evanique.
Chapter 59, Long Living. In governing people and serving heaven, there is nothing more important than prudence. Only people of prudence can have early submission preparation. Early submission is to reaccumulate the virtue. Reaccumulating virtue leads to invincibility. Invincibility leads to unlimited potential. People with unlimited potential can rule the state. Ruling the state with this principle can last long. This is the principle Dao of being deeply rooted on firm foundation, long living, and successive ruling.
Wonderful. Next up, as Jason has pointed out, this is a favorite one of Ronald Reagan. So Joe is going to do his Ronald Reagan impression of this one. No, Joe, you don't need to do that, but go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not a very good actor. So chapter 60, governing a large nation. Govern a large nation as you would cook a small fish. When Tao prevails over the world, the ghosts lose their spiritual powers. Not only do the ghosts lose their spiritual powers, but even the spirits also do not harm people. Not only do the spirits not harm people, even the sage does not harm people either, because neither harm, the virtue returns.
Thank you, Joe. Next up, anybody who wants to comment on this. So this is going to be the last three verses. And then at 10 o'clock, we're going to be talking about the common patterns between Dao De Jing, Bhagavad Gita, and the Bible. So go ahead and type an exclamation mark if you'd like to comment on these three verses. We'll start with Joe.
Yes, for number 60, I guess, is the famous line, and basically is just to not overreach with our power. Essentially, is essentially what it's saying, and that while this, I remember distinctly having this discussion that it doesn't necessarily mean what Ronald Reagan intended it to mean, that it was just a smaller government per se, but rather not to rule with force, essentially. And that's all I'll say for now.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Jason.
Yes, nobody want to comment? I think numbers, yeah, just like number 60, and because I think it's Ronald Reagan's explanation, I just don't overdo it. I think that's right. Okay, to me, okay, I think, okay. And he's talking about this because the collapse of the Soviet Union, and that's the time, you know, when American was in the considered American great at that time. So he believed the force is not the one to win. Okay, so I think the quote very properly, at least in my opinion. But the rest, I remember in our discussion, we talk a lot about the ghost and the spirit, the different concept. And we probably should not talk about this today. Let's go.
Let me do, Jason, let me let other people comment and then you can continue. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Next up is going to be Margarita, followed by David. Margarita.
Yeah. It takes time for me to rethink about chapter 60. Because in ASEAN, we have ASEAN, Southeast Asian countries. We have this organization called ASEAN. One of the main principles is non-interference, actually. So for me, as people who live in that area, sometimes this principle is difficult to accept. There were moments like Rohingya, non-interference is opted. Even in Timor-Leste, when they have to do the, whether they will separate or they would separate or not with Indonesia, non-interference was also opted, even though there's so many tragedy with humanity. So it's not easy to do that, to cook this small fish, not overdone, not to overdo it. So I don't think it's so easy for leaders to understand this and to apply this. Even though Ronald Reagan may be like this, probably he's not doing that all because it's so not easy. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Margarita. Next up is David.
Well, there you go again. That's my best Ronald Reagan. But I mean, what's interesting, as Margarita was saying earlier about chapters 57, 58, you know, what's curious to me is exactly that 57, 58, let's see, is it 57? It's definitely, yeah, I mean, 57, 58, 59, or 58, 57, 58 are specifically talking about countries and government, and 60 is specifically, as we mentioned, talking about governing. And so I'm really curious what 59 means, or I'm just curious about the ordering of, you know, having all these essentially statements about how to, I mean sort of repetition of Wu Wei, you know, go with the flow, the inaction for how to govern people, to not be too sort of you know, harsh, micromanaging, and then, you know, 60, which, you know, whether you agree with Reagan's interpretation or not, but sort of, you know, hands off, limited government, these sorts of things. But 60, you know, it's like, you know, how to rule a big country, how to rule a small country, you know. But 59, I mean, it's just interesting. It's sort of a rhetorical question of what that chapter means in there, because it doesn't seem to be a specific, I mean, it's talking about power and spirit and, you know, deep roots, but it's I'm just curious how that sort of fits into the flow of these chapters. 57, 58, and 60 definitely are, very explicit, shall we say, intention, directives, guidance of how to rule. I'm just curious, just thinking out loud, whether 59 fits into that somehow, or it's meant to be an interlude, like an explicit interlude of let's, now for something completely different. Okay, let's get back to governing.
Thank you, David. Next up is Kevin.
Yeah, I would comment chapter 60. It's the interference one keyword. I would say use another policy consistent. It's, for example, our democracy 4 years, 5 years. We keep see you one opposite party say you failed, another party I doing good. So as ordinary people like face, little face, they're going to turn over again. We keep following, catch up the policy. So politicians play game, ordinary people surfing. I can see from this chapter. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up is Jason.
Oh, yeah, thank you. A few things, I think it's a few things. That's answer whose question? David or okay, so about the political, the continuity of 58, 59, 50, and 60. I think they all talk about politics, right? This one talk about the not inward reflecting. Okay, so remember we talk about the word. Remember I used the word introspect, and I say 观察. Okay, 观 means look inward, 察 means look outward. You talk about here, use the word 察. That means looking outward. If the government looking outward, okay, and then, for example, you keep checking on the people become smart and become cunning. So it causes the problem. So the government should look inward. Okay, so they use the word men. In today's words means you are sad, you are introvert. Okay, but if you look at the word, basics is this heart inside your door. That means you look inward, and then people will be honest. They will like be honest. So I think that's the way talking about government. Don't bother people too much. Okay, so that's the thing. Talk about government. And 60, we all know, talk about governing a state, a large state. And the 59 even talk about long living, right? But it's also talking about from the small to big, right? Talking about your personal, okay, prove the prudence, okay, and then go to submission, early preparation, submission, and blah blah blah, and go to the governing the state. So even start from self, add to the state, and the purpose of a governing state, is last long. So the long living means personal long living, also means the state's long living. So it's the way let's go back to a little bit the cosmology view in the East and the West, or especially Chinese view. The Western, that stuff from Greek. The cosmology is inorganic. That's the world. That's the sky. That's the earth. That's 4 elements. That's everything, right? And I'm here. I'm looking at this cosmos, this world. In Chinese, it's different. Remember, we talked about 3 things: heaven, people, and earth, right? People stay between heaven and earth. So the whole cosmology, including people is a part of that. So same thing as politics. In Western, politics is more inorganic. So in the Chinese thinking, politics is more organic. So people are included. So if the way I preserve myself, I cultivate myself, is the same way I cultivate the state. So they are all homogeneous, the same material of me and the state and the world. So I think that's the big concept, okay? Big concept, the different concept. between the two sides of world. So I hope I explained clearly. And the second thing, I think the Mandarin mentioned about the family relation, right? In this couple chapter, already mentioned the son, the mother, the newborn baby, and the toddler. Okay, I translate that as a toddler. Yes, that's important. Again, that's related to the homogeneous concept of the world, right? The people, the family relationship is the same as the cosmological relationship between, and also same relationship as government. So if you put this one in the concept, and I just like to make a few technical clarification, right? When we talk about mother and the son, you talk about something produce the son. Okay, so whatever you can say, mother and the son. When in this book, Dao De Jing talk about so-called 赤子, which is newborn baby. Okay, that means the wholeness, the good thing. Okay, the newborn baby is the best, because the strong, doesn't know the sexual intercourse, have an erection. Okay, so all and the fist, the bone and the tendon are soft, but it can hold tight. Crying all day, but the son doesn't get coarse. So that means the wholeness, they have the whole chi, okay, in the baby, as a newborn baby. If you pay attention on the newborn baby, usually they talk about the good, okay, the full of energy of a newborn baby. When this book talk about the toddler, okay, high, it show a few times, usually talking about kind of ignorant, okay, you have no knowledge, it just started. So that's the different concept and the meaning of this word I'd like to mention. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. And we got done at 9:59 for this part.
Yeah,
Folks,
I probably have to go now. Yeah, so.
Sure. What we're going to do is that we're going to do a third part of this. We managed to reach the Ronald Reagan's favorite one. I'm going to stop sharing. What I want to do now is I want to give you a diagram. Jason, could you stop sharing the screen? Thank you. I want to give you a diagram which summarizes what we've been studying in Gita, Dao De Jing, and the Bible. Okay, so this is my take on seeing the commonalities between them. I've been working on this for a while. So this is the best thing I have now. Let me show you. Give me just a second here. Sharing the screen, start broadcast. Okay, there it is. And let me go here. Okay. So folks, it's basically a very simple diagram. There are two axes. There is a vertical axis, which is the spiritual axis, and the horizontal axis right here, which is the material axis. And there are three things that are going on here. This is the spirit. So first I'm going to put it, I'm going to start with where I came up with this for the first time. And that was in Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita talks about Jnana Yoga. So this is Jnana Yoga, which is all about knowledge of Brahma and Atma. Atma, this is your eye over here. This is your eye, which is Atma, and this is Brahma. So knowledge is knowledge of your own core and that of Brahma, which is God, universe, whichever way you want to put it. Then there is Karma Yoga, is you acting in the world. So now you can see that's the green. So what you're doing is that you're acting from the top of your knowledge and you're applying that to the world. So if you look at this point here, this is the world. So it's all about applying. This one for now, I'll just call the highest. So for example, the highest in Hinduism would be called Brahma. So let me do that here. So this would be Brahma. The I would be called Atma. And the world would be called Vishwa. So Jnana Yoga is about pursuing knowledge of Atma and Brahma. Karma Yoga is about using your knowledge to do good things in the world, transforming the world, making it better. And the last one is called Bhakti Yoga, that is devotion or love. So if you want general words here, this is about love. This one is about work. And this one is about knowledge. So that is how Indian thought looks at it. Now let's look at the Bible. And this is the latest one. I've put it in various ways, but I had much greater quality, much better clarity of the insight here. This morning, I was doing a meetup, or actually a conversation on Gospel of John 1 with a scholar who reads it in original Greek. But this is my take on it. So this entire axis here, the vertical axis, is God the Father. So God the Father loved the world so much that he sent his only son. So what the son is, what Jesus is that it's word, which is over here. Word is here. Word made flesh, bringing the divine to the earth. That's what Jesus does. It is applying the highest principle, bringing the truth, the word, to the world and in flesh. That's what this is. This is what, equivalent of Karma Yoga. And what is the result of that? The result of that is Holy Spirit. Just a second, wrong color. The Holy Spirit is your love of the center. It is this love that draws you towards your own center or towards God. So God, that is here, God the Father, sends the Son to the world to create a love for God, which is Holy Spirit, in people to bring them to God. So that is Bible, as I understand it. Now, for the Tao, this is clearly Wu Wei. What is Wu Wei? So Tao is right here. So this is, you can call, actually, if you want to put it technically, the Tao is sitting here along with Brahma. This is a principle of operation of the world. This one here is the sage. In the Bible context, this is your soul. So a sage is focused on the Tao, is focused like this, inside himself. He acts with Wu Wei along the line of the Tao. And what that produces is actually, in people, it produces, if you look at the entire consequences with people, what it does is that it produces so that the people just flow to the Dao. They act in accordance with Dao instead of forcing them, because his actions are in accordance with the Dao. People do things themselves in accordance with their own nature, which is the same as them acting as close to this as possible. So that is the loop. So this is happening on earth. This is purely spiritual. And this is the one that is spanning the spirit and the material. So let me, I would say here, just give me a second here. So I would say just good people coming to the Dao. I don't have a very good way of putting these words here yet for Dao De Jing, but I see this common pattern. So if you want to look at philosophy, you can look at it as this one. You can also call action. So in philosophy, it is work or action here. It is knowledge here, and it is love here. So those are kind of generic terms. And these are the various ways in which I see them in these three works. So I would appreciate any comments that you have. Go ahead and type exclamation mark if you'd like to comment. We'll start with David Adelson, followed by Evanik. David.
Yes, thanks, Shrikant. I mean, you've been presenting this a number of times, and I mean, it's a very interesting concept. I've been trying to get my head around it. I mean, I'm understanding it more now, and I definitely see and appreciate the cycle. I mean, one thing that just is I mean, I understand. I mean, how to put this. I mean, I appreciate what you're trying to express. I understand that you've got these axes. I mean, one is completely spiritual, one is the world, and that you were trying to find, and you're describing a way of bringing the spiritual to the earth, or back to the person via, I mean, not so much an indirection, but via this world. I mean, as you're saying with karma, with Wu Wei. And the one thing that I'm just concerned, trying to understand is that third axis. I mean, that, I understand from the human to the spiritual. I understand all the axes. What I'm confused about is that, for example, in Judaism, God is saying, love is the most important thing, and Jesus is saying love is the most important. So it's a spiritual in a certain way. I'm less familiar exactly with karma and bhakti and jnana to say exactly which is solely material versus spiritual, but it just seems that there's something that needs to be clarified. I mean, at least that love maybe is.
Sure. So you could take it as a question, and I will answer it. What this is showing is your love of the spirit. This love, it is moving towards this axis. It is the love of God. It is the thing that brings all your actions towards God. So if you want to look at, for example, the chapter 4. So this is, Jesus speaks, and some Samaritan woman goes running to the village, and the people say, hear the truth that is there in his, and they come running, and they come to Jesus and ask to stay there. So, but try to formulate your question. I'm going to have people first comment, but please come back, once everybody else has commented, please come back and formulate it as a question, and I will try to answer it. Next up is going to be Evanik, followed by Joe. Oh, just a second. Joe, do you want to make a quick comment before you drop off?
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment. The thing that I've noticed in seeing this diagram now more than anything is the the relationship between the self and the other, and the importance of that, so that you're becoming your ideal self in order to become more of your ability to serve the other or to engage with the other, however you would wish to put it. So it kind of just gives this idea of both the individual and the collective as well. And then there's the at its core, love, and how that kind of brings everything together. So it's kind of it's a beautiful loop, and how it shows the relationship between us and humanity.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Thanks. I will just comment one thing on it. So what it is that you are focused, when you are focused on your own core, and when you're doing this namaste in the Indian tradition, you're saying, God in me. God in me is here. This is God in me. Greets the God in you. When somebody else is standing here and you're greeting the God in them, there is a love that is created automatically from that. And that brings you together because both of you are focused on the God in yourself. So in your action of pursuing God in you, you are automatically creating a community of people doing the same thing. So that's how kind of the individual and the community come together in just one stroke. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Next up is Evanik.
I have a question. I love the point that you made that Holy Spirit is love of the center. I do love that. But I have a question. Where does Jesus fit into this diagram? I don't, is Jesus equivalent to Brahma or?
Okay, that's a great question. I've struggled with that. So I'm putting him right here, the Son. Because, and the reason I'm putting him here is that he is being sent by God. This is the vertical axis. You can see my cursor, right? No?
Not really.
Oh, really? But, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to draw on this and then I will rub it out. It's very easy. So this is God, the Father. Okay. He sends his Son. This is him sending his Son. This is the Son. This is the Jesus. This is Jesus. He is 100% God and 100% man. So he is the manifestation of divine right here on earth. So it is this, him coming down. And what he does is that he releases Holy Spirit, which is this right here, Holy Spirit, which is the love that anybody here feels towards God. So that is the loop. So God, so this is the Trinity right here. So this is Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. That's how I see it. What do you think?
I think that's correct. I mean, I don't know if it's correct, but it makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And I agree with your assessment.
Thank you. I'm still working on it, but this is the best I have. You know, this is, I think this captures it. I have really struggled with this. You know, originally I had put all three of them right here. You know, Father at the top, Holy Spirit is the love in your heart over here, the Holy Ghost, and Son in the middle as word is how I had put it. But what I'm realizing is that it includes the world and it is operating in the world, and the medium through which it is operating in the world is the Son over here. And that's why, you know, the Son's coming to the world. That is what this entire axis is, the green arrow. And then it releases the Holy Spirit, which brings people to God. Thank you, Avanik. Really appreciate the question. Let's see, next up is Katie, followed by David. Katie.
I was making a small point in the chat about the Brahman or seeing the Atma in you and the Atma in the other person is almost like in the Dao De Jing, seeing the life force that's animating all living things is in you, it's in a dog, it's in so that was my small point.
Absolutely, and that's absolutely explicit. It's true, and it is very explicit in Gita that when you are focused, when you're looking at other beings, whether it be other people or animals or plants, you are focused on the spirit in them, the chi in them, the spirit in them. Absolutely. Thank you. Next is David. David, go ahead.
Yeah, separate from, I still don't know how to ask the question, but for the third axis in the Dao, maybe it's Qigong.
I will look at it. I will have to check. Let me look at it. Why would you say it is Qigong? I don't understand Qigong very well. So can you explain to me?
Because, I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but it's sort of action in the world. It's sort of, I think of it equivalent to bhakti. I mean, it's a matter of how to, I mean, with health, it's a physical action in the world to bring the external world and act in it, act on it.
And to bring it closer to
you, to the person.
Wonderful. Excellent. All right. Let's see here. Okay, folks, so thank you very much. This has been amazing, and we are continuing. So to give you a report, let me stop sharing here first. Okay, so I want to give you a report on what is going on with all these 3 meetups. It's been amazing. So firstly, Dao De Jing continues. We're doing it every Tuesday. We are doing these, we've done these 3 of these meetups like today's, where we look at like 20 or so verses at a time. We will do one final version of it, but that will be now after we're finished with the Tuesday series. After we're done with that, I'm talking to Jason, we will probably do Confucius analytics, because that is the other, it's like the Chinese philosophy has 2 bases. Like unlike unlike the Bible, unlike the Gita, where there's that one source, which is really the primary source. In China, it is 2. So you have in yin yang stuff. This is like a yin version. There is a yang version, which is the Confucius analytics. So we would, that's what we would like to go to. It's about the same size as Dao De Jing. So that's the tentative plan after finishing this. The Gita meetups are going incredibly well. I'm fortunate to have my friend Yogeshwar join us for these meetups, and we are making really, really amazing progress there. I'm completely blown away by it. I'm reading a commentary by Nyaneshwar. It's not really a commentary. It is like a popularization of Gita, which is about 15 times as long as Gita itself. Evanik, if you have the link to the thing that I sent out, could you put that in chat for Nyaneshwar? I'll recommend that very highly. It makes Gita far more accessible than Gita itself, because purpose of Nyaneshwar was to actually speak to farmers who couldn't even read and write and convey Gita. And I have to tell you, he actually does that. So it is really profound work. And we found, Yasuhiko found it. Yasuhiko found a great English translation of Gita, of Nyaneshwari. So I would definitely recommend looking at that. But those meetups are going very well. We have decided to double up on it to go through it faster. So it's Fridays at 9 p.m. and Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern time, both Eastern time. Last is Gospel of John. We're doing very well with Aquinas. I'm thinking of kind of several modifications to it because I'm going into it very deeply at this point. So I will talk to Evanique. Evanique, if you have time, if you could stay for a few more minutes, I will want to talk to you about that. But I want to tell you that I'm doing like one-on-one conversations on people who really love the Gospel of John. So I did this with a friend of mine, Baron, and each of these people are very different from each other. You know, Baron is a mathematician and he's very precise and very short. And he has this really great short comments. So he read the whole thing. It takes 1.5 hours to read it out. And he has his commentaries about half an hour, you know, interspersed on each of the chapters. So that is available. Today, I talked to Nick. I told Nick, oh, that's what I did with Baron. You know, we went through all of the gospel. He looked at me and says, look, I typically read about 15 pages of commentary on every verse, every sentence of John. And I have read several such commentaries. That's how I think my mind works. So can we please do just John 1? I said, okay. And we managed to finish about 1/3 of John 1, but it is just pure gold. So I'm going to post that video hopefully today. And these conversations, you know, these are very, very deep conversations. Coming up with, you know, my understanding of John is significantly higher. So for example, moving that, you know, the Trinity being just on the spiritual axis and spreading it out, that idea I got after talking to Nick. So I'm getting really fundamental things. So, and I want to do this with other people like Evanique, who is very, you know, who's really deeply into the Bible. So each person is different. So like Nick is a scholar. He actually reads John in Greek, the original Greek. So we start out by reading the Greek part and then start to translate it and saying, what does, when it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. What does with mean? The with actually is not a good translation because it is translated very differently in German and Italian, which he also reads. But he also reads the original Greek. What the flavor of it is that the person is right next to you. He's sitting right next to you. So he's with in that sense of physical proximity. And he just went on to make these amazing things of saying that the distance, the fact that the Father and Son are distinct and there is love between them, which basically expands them then into the Holy Spirit. So in the beginning itself, there is this Trinity right there. And that distance is actually a positive because you are getting now 3 in 1. And there is this interaction between them, which adds a much greater richness. And all of that is just like small part of the first sentence, but it just goes on and on like that. So I'm introducing that. For Gita, we are doing some overviews. We've done a fantastic video that Yogeshwar did a fantastic presentation on Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. So I recommend that. So we're going back and forth. The Gita is the hardest because the Indian mind is the furthest away and all its achievements are in the consciousness. So you kind of have to understand how to talk about this, and which is very hard using concepts which are very different, come from a very different culture. So we're trying to do that. And so that's what, you know, that's what we are doing. So it's always an honor and a pleasure to have so many great thinkers here giving, you know, talking aloud about so many things, going back and forth, really amazing. So thank you, everybody. And Evanique, if you could just stay on, I want to tell you about what I'm thinking of doing. All right, folks, so I'm going to stop the recording. Bye, everybody.